themselves are debating the legalities around the bill, which is known as the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026, to which we'll have a better understanding as we get to look at the shaping and discourse of the next leadership of our country for the next 5 years. So in Uganda's political journey, there are definitely moments such as this bill, and there are other moments such as leadership retreats that are shaping us as a country, and there are spaces that are put for people to come together and make certain decisions that may affect you and me. I think one of the decisions that was made by the NRM party chairperson that has rubbed Ugandans the wrong way is, the appreciation money and facilitation that he has given to MPs who subscribe to the NRM so that they can swear in and also just really ease on the financial pressures they had as they went through the election period. And some people wondering, okay, that's not bad, but how are we seeing the state of our country, especially as far as education and medical is concerned? Can we also get some facilitations towards that are that instant as what's happening for the party level? So one such space is Chankwanzi, and for years the National Leadership Institute has hosted retreats that are meant to instill discipline, ideological clarity and shared national vision among leaders. From the newly elected MPs to senior government officials, Chankwanzi has become a defining feature for political orientation here in Uganda. But as the country is grappling with persistent corruption, we are having growing public skepticism and now renewed debate around the Protection of Sovereignty Bill 2026. We definitely are having a critical question to ask ourselves as we embed and, just work around some of these things and how they get to affect us. This morning, I was listening, to a radio station, and they were trying to just break down the Protection of Sovereignty Bill and saying, now, if you have your friend, your brother, your mother who is out of Uganda, and they have to send you mobile money, yeah, you end up in prison. But we'll have a better understanding of all these things. Are retreats producing transformative leadership or reinforcing political conformity? Do the resolutions made in Chankwanzi translate into governance for you and me, or remain rhetoric? And as a country, do we seek to assert sovereignty, or are we just protecting something else altogether? And at what cost is that protection coming to the ordinary Ugandan? My guests this morning, I'm being joined to my immediate left by Sheikh Kasim Kamgisha, offering a legal and constitutional lens on governance and, of course, emerging legislation. You're most welcome, Kasim.
Thank you, Regina. Good morning, Uganda.
It's a pleasure to have you. Next in, we do have Dr. Sarah Birete, known for her strong views on accountability, transparency, and civic space. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla, panelists and viewers out there.
Then we also do have the party a voice with us this morning, and that is Major Paula Awit, who's bringing the party's perspective on ideology, governance, and of course the global positioning of our country. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla, and morning to my colleagues, and morning to the viewers.
Mr. Timothy Chamogezi is also joining us, providing a broader political analysis and institutional critique on what's happening right now and where it takes us as a country. Timothy, good morning.
Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, colleagues present in the studio and our viewers. Happy to be here.
Okay, so just to have a fire round, when you hear the leadership institution Chankwanzi, what comes to your mind? Let me start with Kasim.
Thank you, Regina. Once again, good morning, Uganda. I'm intrigued why my senior couldn't give us guidance in that, because
I have not been asked. I was waiting for it.
I'm intrigued.
I'm waiting for it.
Because he was part of the retreat as a party official, but by and large, Chankwanzi's National Leadership Institute, for every citizen of this country to have time and interact with the Chankwanzi as a platform for ideological grounding and orientation broadly, but also narrowing it guiding strategic players in our leadership in this country on what they expected to offer in their positions of leadership. But also, every country moves on policies. And once in a while, there are always divergence on how to ensure that the policies are implemented. So Chankwanzi comes in handy to ensure that it converges divergent brains onto a one policy direction for the country. But above all, if I can construe it to the concluded retreat, you have a new parliament which has got a broader constitution in terms of the MPs who have come on board. Some are younger, have been just mere supporters of the party, but not grounded in terms of the party principles. You have got the older ones who have been there for quite some time. They have got experience. They have seen it all. And so bringing them together to harmonize the energy of the young legislators, but also shaping them from just mere supporters to real party leaders at a strategic level, but also bringing together the experience of the older members of parliament into one direction, I think is very critical, and that is what Chankwanzi offers.
Okay.
But above all, when you see the composition this time, it was quite broader. You have various political parties within the same area, and therefore I think there is a move towards harmonizing the minds to the strategic movement of the country, not necessarily on party lines, but on what leadership can offer for the next 5 years of our country.
All right, Sarah?
Well, Chankwanzi is a public facility. I think many young Ugandans might not know that Chankwanzi belongs to government and is funded by taxpayers' money because of the way it's used. So previously, Chankwanzi was a capacity building center for shaping the best of public service in Uganda. Capacity strengthening, indoctrination, direction of, delivering services to the people. That's why it was established. But NRM has hijacked Chankwanzi, and it's now under UPDF and NRM party captivity. What do I say so? This Chankwanzi runs on taxpayers' money. I don't know whether NRM party pays for the use of Chankwanzi, or they go there and spend taxpayers' money as a single political party. Under our political spending monitoring, NGOs have written on several occasions to Chankwanzi to inquire whether NRM pays for the use of services of a public facility, or they go and spend taxpayers' money and authorize it. And it's good we have one of the directors. He will tell us whether they book, pick invoices, and pay. So Chankwanzi should be open for other people to use, including other political parties. But I am also aware that CSOs have written seeking to use Chankwanzi, and there was no feedback. So that is an epitome of abuse of public facilities, of taxpayers' money. The other characteristic we see in Chankwanzi is donning military stores, even with the name UPDF. So under the UPDF Act and the UPDF Amendment Act, that amounts to a crime. So I don't know whether the act exempts NRM party to don military stores whenever they wish, or if they are bound by their own laws, because the UPDF Amendment Act was a government bill, now an act of parliament. They also engage in military parades, and we are aware that when NUPA attempted to do a military parade at their own headquarters, many of their supporters are languishing in jail for attempting to line up and salute on the birthday of their president. So is the NRM also exempted to do military parades in military stores, or they are not bound by their own laws?
Okay, all right. Chewongezi, when you hear the Leadership Institute in Changwanzi, what comes to your mind?
Not very far from Sarah's submission, that in principle and the thinking around the establishment of the National Leadership Institute, it a very noble cause that at a national level, at institutional level, there is need for semblance of ensuring that members, players in a specific sector are able to, retreat, re-strategize and rethink to see how far they are realizing their objectives, but also what needs to be done. And that was the original thinking of the Changwanzi Institute. But I think that over the years, recognizing that there seems to be a very thin line between the party, NRM, the government, and the state. They are one and the same thing. Today, you can hardly distinguish one from the other. It also means that the infrastructure and any other systems that are established between the three fall in the same purview, that you can hardly distinguish. We see the same, and I agree with what Sarah says, that the picture today that the Institute presents is purely a political, but also an NRM thinking, that probably also this is a ground of brainwashing, a platform where a specific group of people go to re-strategize for their own and probably selfish perspectives. But I think that recognizing that it is a government institution, there is more to it. But I've been following very closely on the just recent retreat that the party has been undertaking. And I think that there are a few things that I'm happy about. First of all, looking the fact that you see the new members of parliament, but also the older members of parliament coming together really to engage, to understand what their party is about. I've seen government and also experts being invited to engage the members of parliament, notwithstanding the challenges that are there, but I think that those are positives. But there is need for better accountability around issues of whether the party is really paying for these services, the donning of the UPDF uniform, and how that application of the law seems to be very selective. And of course, lastly, around the issues to do with if it was members of parliament, probably would have more parties represented in this. And probably would the other parties be willing to be part of this? Maybe not. Kasim says it was more inclusive. We saw other parties being included. I only saw Mao, who for now is here or not there, but more part of NRM. So I think it seems to be an NRM affair, and that's the picture that is being projected. Quite selective, but in principle, if revised, I think that it's a beautiful platform that every party, every institution should be able to have that setting or platform where the members can be able to sit back and replan and re-strategize.
Okay. This is where I end it with Paula Awich, who is the Director External Affairs for the National Resistance Movement. And why I needed them to speak first is that so that you get the minds of how the rest of the public is actually perceiving and receiving the Leadership Institute in Changwanzi. So we want to understand from you. It has become sort of a rite of passage when you see leaders within government being the ones who are constantly referred to or invited to Changwanzi here and there. For the ordinary Ugandan that's watching us this morning, What exactly is the Leadership Institute, Chankwanzi? What happens there? Who is it open to, and why? And why should it matter to someone that is in Kulur this morning, watching us from Mbali or Mbarara?
Thank you. I was more comfortable with the framing of the first question, because the framing of the current question makes me start it from where they have stopped. But I thought the viewers would benefit more from the framing of the first question, like what rings bell in your mind when you hear Chankwanzi. To me, it is a more general question and more open-ended question. Be as it is, Chankwanzi, for me, when I hear, it rings a lot of historical effects or information in my mind. Chankwanzi is a development of an NRA war which was more ideological than military. I can assure you, if you take the NRA war of 81 to 85, maybe 50-50%. 50 was fighting, 50 was ideological. To the extent that at all formations, even at a platoon commander level, whenever there was no combat, a platoon commander was expected to sit down and discuss ideology with the soldiers at a battalion, at all formations. Therefore, the ideological background was that NRA started by camps starting to write newsletters. You write a newsletter, ideological, to circulate it to the other camp, circulate it to other. So eventually the idea was, why not have a school so that these discussions take place centrally? And that is when people like the Kakosa Mutari came up to start, of course with the guidance of President Chairman High Command then Museveni. So a political school was formed, long in the bush. It was one, and as it grew, it emerged into the civil sector to cater for the civilian and the military. And the military was given to some gentleman you may not know called Colonel Ronald Katonguka. Katonguka now ran the military wing, and Kakosa Mutale ran the civilian wing until it came to Wakisu and then Namugongo, and then from Namugongo it was moved to Chankwanzi. Now the whole idea was, for a struggle, you need ideological clarity. Now this was the basis which kept the protracted struggle. A protracted is opposite of coming straight to take over power, like the Kaira wanted to attack Lubiri. A protracted one means let the struggle go to Fort Wolfram, go to Kasese, go to Mbara, go where, capture the rest of the country, as you educate the people. Therefore, at the capture of Kampala, as I said, from Wakiso to Namugongo to Chankwanzi, it now became solidified as an institution of ideological strength, like it did during the struggle. Now, because of its impact, many institutions saw it necessary. It is not only political. Even, for example, National Water and Sewage can take its staffs. Uganda Revenue Authority can take its staffs. Uganda Electricity Distribution can take its staffs. The whole idea is, when you go there, you're supposed to develop a strong ideological patriotic system. And that is why even non-political actors go there. We have also had situations, for example, where we get even trainers from other countries like Kenya, the ruling part of Kenya, we have had them. Because it is tested, because of its historical strengths, that it gives that ideological patriotic feeling. For example, people have been asking, why don't you take these courses you train here, integrated, say, to A-level syllabus, where you can teach in high school? We say no, because of the historical development. There is a unwritten spirit in Chankwanzi, which you cannot plant that spirit if you integrate in a syllabus in Namiliango, in King's College, Budo, in Tororo College or Teso College. That spirit exists, and for sure it does, because we have tested and found that cadres who come out from there come change, including foreigners. We have had a demand from foreigners. So now, it went on well under the political system, then the movement. Problems started seeing cracks when there was a demand for what you call opening up. That is when you found people like the Cecilia Ogwal, may her soul rest in peace, saying, if you are saying a movement system is for everybody, how about me who is being conscripted? And that led to a referendum to say, let's test the people. Let's ask if people want to go multi-party or not. Now, that was when voices were starting to think that when you go to Changwanzi, you are taught NRM. And that is when these views of, is it NRM, is it only for NRM, is it for other parties? But it's such a national institute that for me, I would even wish other political parties go there. And I believe they wouldn't come back the same. But because they fear they wouldn't come back the same, they fear going there. Nobody has refused them. Indeed, it is a national institute under the office of the president, with the accounting officer, currently the PS called Haji Kakande. But I think, and I'm sure that the other political parties, knowing the spirit that is there, because when you go to Chankwanzi, you get the spirit. And that's why I'm saying, if you integrate the courses there are some courses you wouldn't integrate in high schools. And also there are some courses which are practically difficult to teach. For example, the idea of democratization of means of violence has been picked during the struggle. And I think it is codified somewhere, if you read through the Constitution or other relevant laws. It is codified in that the means of violence, the gun, had been used to intimidate Ugandans. Therefore, it should be democratized. And that becomes a course item to teach the gun. You won't teach that in Namliang, you won't teach that in Budu. You can only teach that in Chankwanzi. So there are some subjects which by its nature you don't teach. But still, because of the historical development of this institution since the struggle, for sure there are spirits that you would enter in Chankwanzi. That is not written, that is not codified, that is not documented, that you wouldn't get it outside. And that's why I'm thinking that even these other political parties can go. Now, about the expenses, whoever goes there meets the expense. If National Water and Sewage took its staff, they pay. If Uganda Electricity Distribution take its staff, they pay. If prisons takes its staff, they pay. If NRM takes its staff, we meet the cost. So about the cost, there's nothing secret about it. All organizations present their cost. Now, because the staffs themselves, what you could call the hard instrument there, are government officers mandated to instill this ideological strength, to instill this atmosphere of patriotism and Pan-Africanism, which I've already told you, we have had demand from Kenya, we have had demand from SPLM, we have had demand from all other our colleagues who want to do this. Now, the staffs there are paid by taxpayers' money, but other organs that go there do pay. So, Chankwanzi, therefore, is just an institution which over time, since the Bush struggle, as I said, it has been a mobile school, by the way. The last two mobile positions being Wakiso and Namugongo, and finally there. So it is just a national institution.
Thank you so much, Awit. Ideological transformation or strengthening is what you state as the backbone of the institute, of course, stating that it has the military wing and the civilian wing. Dr. Sarah, this is where I want to bring you in terms of what he has shared, what the baseline of the institute was originally versus what you've seen it evolve into as of today. We get to see that the intent is to have a uniform way of thinking. In your view, is ideological alignment actually necessary for stability? And then where do we leave pluralism? Because in as much as we want to have an uniform ideology, but at the same time, Kasim brings something different to the table. You bring something different, which brings something different. Timothy brings something different to the table, which collectively can actually get us somewhere.
You know, ideological clarity, or for the NRM to go and harmonize their 5-year legislative agenda, is very good practice for any entity. Even us as civil society leaders, every year we do retreats as a collective. About 100 organizations, people are selected, and we sit and say, what is in the civic space? What views or citizens' concerns should we champion? And we come up with a roadmap. So a party to go and strategize for their 5-year legislative agenda is very good practice in a multi-party dispensation. And NRM has been consistent on this. Other parties are affected, of course, by funding limitations or their different agendas. So that, in principle, is very good. Our challenge with NARI, as I mentioned, I want to be on record that civil society organizations wanted to do a retreat in Changwanzi. But we never got a response to our request. This is about 5 years ago. We never got a response. You apply, you say you need the guidance on how to access a facility, and there is silence. The same has happened to several entities trying to access Kororo. So NARI is not the only public space that is under NRM capture. Apply to use Kororo ceremonial grounds. Nobody will give you feedback. You write, there is silence. There is a time National Unity Platform paid. They were told what to pay. They paid and the facility was blocked with even no feedback or refund of their money. So the use of public facilities, the monopolizing or capture of public facilities by NRM is fundamentally wrong. And they need to play fair and square if they are indeed a political party, not just a military establishment.
Yeah, but still on the element of alignment and having a uniform way of thinking that they believe should be transformed to other leaders. What's your stance on that?
Every party has its own constitution, its own practices. That's what a multi-party dispensation is about. If other parties think what NRM is doing is good, they are free to copy. Everybody benchmarks from good practices. If they think they have better methods of harmonizing their agenda, I might not be privy to that information. I know that I have attended once an opposition legislative agenda setting. So every group should attend or have, if we have a period of 5 years, say for the proposals to change it, set your agenda. What are your goals? Okay. What is your focus? And this should be derived also or in harmony with your manifesto. That's how organized political entities work.
Allow me to follow up. You have made mention of the National Unity Platform expressing interest to hold an engagement at one of the public spaces called ceremonial grounds, and they were denied that access. And I think maybe over a continued course of that denial, they have had to re-strategize as a party, having the same mindset of ideological clarity, come up with their own leadership institute and do exactly what the NRM is doing. However, of course, you know, the infliction that has happened to them as they're taking that direction, to the extent that some of its institute leaders are behind bars as we have this conversation this morning. Can you talk to us about that conflict and how it really does not exactly create an open space for all political actors to act, align thinking according to what they believe as individual parties?
You know, since the return to multipartism in 2006 through the 2005 constitutional amendment, in practice, this country has been running under a dual system. The constitution demands that when the movement system is in abeyance, when we are in a multiparty dispensation, the movement system is in abeyance. But because of the technical maneuvers of the people who are in the leadership of NRM at the moment and government, they smuggled out the name of the system and coined it as a party. And nothing in practice has changed. You have NRM versus others. And that was the question on the referendum. So we have not overcome that technical maneuver by the people who were in the NRM system then to run a dual system. So constitutionally, you have NRM, which assumes it's under movement system, hijacks Kororo, hijacks Changwanzi. The other time when we were given permission to plant trees at State Square, everybody was shocked because it came as a surprise. Like, how can you be here? But on Constitutional Day, commemorating 30 years of the Constitution, we did right to plant commemorative trees at the square, and we were there. Everybody got shocked how it happened, and I thank KCCA for really that leverage. But this mentality of dominating public spaces and refusing other people usage is, I think, very bad practice by NRM, and they need to change.
Timothy Chemonges, as one who analyzes things in terms of policy perspectives, ideological alignment versus stability versus pluralism versus other political players.
Yeah. So you see, multi-party system is such that the views of the party or the direction of the party takes precedent to those of the individuals, although they could be harmonized internally. And that because of that, you want to have members who are subject to the decision of the party in understanding what that means. Now, in the current context, how NRM wants to do their thing, how they eventually want to come to decisions, I think that is an internal matter. But alignment, as Sarah indicates, is very important. And for all political parties, including institutions, to understand that the members, in taking a decision, recognize that we are working towards strengthening this institution. But again, I think that looking at the practices, looking at the decisions that we've made in the recent past, in terms of how other political parties should operate in this ecosystem, together with that of NRM, there's been a very deliberate effort to ensure that that is frustrated. Probably could be informed by the fact that maybe the players in NRM in first place never believed about the multi-party system. And so the only option that is left is probably to frustrate that. The co-option strategy by NRM seems to be very effective. That, you know, find mechanism to ensure that for parties that are not willing to be co-opted, frustrate them, put them in prison, and probably use the legal framework to put them in their place. For those that are willing to cooperate and engage, then they are able to, you know, find space within the ecosystem. But nonetheless, and that probably even extends to what we see in the funding space of the political party. The just amended law on funding of political parties seems to be a very clear example that NRM in principle seems not to recognize and probably even would not allow for this. Is because the legal framework as it is seems to constrain them. But otherwise, the practice is such that let NRM be the only party. And because of that, and because of the problem of the non-distinction between the party, the government, and the state, it means that we find ourselves in all this confusion and definitely affects how the democracy is nurtured, how democracy is pushed, and we all champion that direction. The civil society seems to equally, we've faced the same challenge, and probably there seems to be a very deliberate effort to frustrate that sector. So probably as it is now, it's just the NRM party that will be at the forefront. The rest can always be sidelined.
Okay, you've talked about the legal frameworks. Let's turn to the legalities, Kasim, of the matter, ideology versus governance, as we're having this discussion this morning. You get to see, as a country, legally and constitutionally, we are in a multi-party dispensation, without a doubt. But there's the reconciliation of the state institution in Chankwanzi and the need for us to appreciate that there's also political diversity.
First and foremost, I think NARI has, taking ourselves back, NARI has got timetables. And I wouldn't want to crucify NARI on a one-off that CSOs or a CSO wrote and was not granted space. I would take it as a missed call, which you can reply back later. Because NARI has got timetables, and I doubt whether it is always open. People book in advance, and we could give them benefit of doubt. unless there is proof that some CSOs more than one have written more than 3 times and have not gotten feedback. So that we really leave it that it is a national institution that serves all Ugandans. Now, to the legalities of NARI, NRM, then of course the state, the principal position should be that, and that is in ideal democracies which have really matured, it should be that there has to be a clear separation between the political party that is in governance or in leadership, and of course the governance, which includes the legislature, you come to judiciary, security services. But when you look at our democracy as a country, I think we are not more than 25 years in the making. But at some point you want to assume that we are a democracy of 250 years that has really established. And that makes us lose focus on where we should put our energies to ensure that we really give our democracy back up to move. And so you find that our expectation is not met because we are not yet where we should be to have that clear separation. Ideally, Chankwanzi should be to foster cohesion. Then the governance arm implements what has been discussed in Chankwanzi. But because there is no clear demarcation between the two, because of our immaturity of democracy having been so young, we find ourselves missing the point as the population.
Okay.
But first things first, what we should be interrogating is that, for example, whenever there is retreat in Chankwanzi, there are resolutions. Are they followed? Are they implemented? So that when we are discussing the Chankwanzi, we don't discuss it in isolation. We discuss Chankwanzi vis-a-vis what was discussed in the past, the implementation, and what has been discussed now, and for the implementation, so that we can draw a clear line and say, Chankwanzi has been captured because what was discussed the other time in terms of policy has not been implemented, and therefore it's no longer a platform for harmonizing a policy agenda for the country, but an indoctrination for a political party. So that we begin throwing tantrums and of course making sense out of the discussion. So
okay.
My mind would be that, can we reflect on what has been discussions before, the implementations of the resolutions, then we draw a line on whether it is still a platform for guiding the country or it has fallen short of its principal mandate as a national institute.
All right, thank you so much, Kasim. We take a short breather. When we return, that's where we'll be picking up the next segment of the conversation, looking to the resolutions, especially from the recent retreat in Chankwanzi for the National Resistance Movement and the commitments that they have geared towards the next 5 years of governance as a country, and of course tallying it with the previous resolutions and commitments and how far they've gone in realizing some of those. We take a short breather, return shortly. To stay with us. The Leadership Institute Chankwanzi and the most recent retreat that has taken place there, a week-long retreat by the National Resistance Movement, which is also doubling as the ruling party. And I believe one of the sentiments was preparing the older and new guard to streamline them and give them strategic direction for them taking power in the next term of governance for political officers here in Uganda. To which we turn to Director NRM to let us know what were the finalized resolutions by the party towards governance and leadership and ideology, and how do you intend to implement each one of them?
Thank you so much. You have the resolution. Unfortunately, I forgot the hard copy in the car, but I have the soft copy here. So the resolution were made, and they are very beautiful and patriotic resolution. But permit me in a second to close up on the nature of Chankwanzi, because I believe this comment may help to fortify it. in its national and patriotic spirit, which I said the course cannot be replicated in higher public schools, is that, for example, if you're in Chankwanzi, you'll hear even repeated songs of patriotism. Maybe somebody who has been in Kisoro has never heard about Karamoja, or he heard it in geography. But you find songs in Chankwanzi which puts up together. You're hearing about Karamoja, about this. You have things like, small things like not crossing pathways, follow the route, you know, such things over time builds in your patriotic nature. How about small things like, for you to eat, you must work. Such things build in you a patriotic nature. For example, Priscilla, I was in Germany and I saw a wedding. While here during wedding, a man sits in a chair and a lady serves. Okay, lady kneels and serves. In Germany, when you are married, they bring a fresh log of eucalyptus and they give the seesaw smell. The lady holds the other side, the man holds this side, and you cut it with a symptom that should you come into this marriage, it is an act of equality. Okay. Now you find such things, small things like timekeeping, like saying Uganda is for all of us. We can differ as NUP, as NRM in other things, but in Chankwanzi they'll tell you differ is healthy and normal, but Uganda above us all. So I still insist that Chankwanzi, with those small items over time, build somebody into a patriotic nature. And I still insist it's an institution of patriotism. On to the resolutions? The resolution, as I said, is captured into ideological, into economic, it is into segments. But the overall in summary is that, without segmenting, is that key things turn out of this resolution. One, the commitment to support our national leader, whom the country has just given the mandate, that is President Museveni. We said, look, the people have given 71+%, we should stand behind our leader. That is a given. The other thing in the resolution is that it was noted as corruption is a serious vice and must be combated. And to this, it was even broken down nearly to procedural aspect. It went into detail. It went into detail nearly to areas of enforcement. It wasn't such a blanket resolution. So a lot of effort was put into corruption, where members said, colleagues, we are going to this new parliament. We are starting a mandate given to us by the people. We shouldn't allow this again. The other thing that came out is East African integration. There was a principle which said that a coalition of the willing, that if member states are not emphasizing about a togetherness, a coalition of the willing can do, even if it starts on particular projects. For example, Kenya, Uganda can say, you know what, our colleagues are delaying into this integration. For us as Uganda and Kenya, we shall start in a coalition of the willing, the rest will join. So a lot of resolution was done, which I said, the hard copy is a 4-page document, so I can't summarize it here, but I wanted to give the crux of it. The feeling is, which came out is that support for the leadership, this support to fight corruption, the East African integration, and others. So you could also read from the body language of the members that there is indeed willingness to enforce this. It is only time that will tell us. But for us as a political party, knowing that we shall form government, we shall keep as a political party on the back of the government agencies that we would have formed to make sure that we follow them on a periodic basis to see the enforcement of this.
All right, the Daily Monitor this morning gives you a summary of the 4 pages of, what the resolutions were: ideological alignment and accountable leadership. One of them has ensuring all leaders are ideologically grounded and act as custodians of the historical mission of the NRM reject compliancy and democracy and mediocrity in leadership and support firm and decisive measures in fight against corruption. When you talk about the willingness to enforce some of these things, why does the NRM still have a position of willingness instead of action against corruption?
Of course, Priscilla, many people believe that when you don't have the will, you can't act. And that is why people have juxtaposed the idea of having the law, and yet the law is not working. Meaning you have the law, but you don't have the will. The will in this case is defined as the interest, the enthusiasm to do it. So that's what we're calling the willingness. And that's why there has always been that argument, as I said, that you have beautiful laws, but these laws are not biting, meaning you lack the will. There's sometimes you can even put it further as political will.
Speaking of laws and resolutions, Kasim, earlier on you had mentioned that maybe perhaps we should have, you know, an interrogation that stems from previous NRM retreats and then following up to the most recent one and see if there's actually been any actualization and achievement of some of the resolutions that have come out of various retreats.
First and foremost, I want to appreciate the enthusiasm which we are seeing on camera in the retreat in Changwanzi, especially when the matter of corruption became very prominent in the discussion. It symbolizes something very, very deep, that the whole country, irrespective of which political spectrum you are coming from, you are feeling the pinch of corruption. But the only problem is that Ugandans are looking at and are hearing this as rhetoric. And therefore, it's now a challenge that since it is part of the resolution, because if I'm not mistaken, part of the 2021 resolutions in Changwanzi where one standing point, which I remember, was to advocate and champion for the PDM. And we saw Parliament unequivocally supporting and allocating funds for PDM in the last 5 years, which we think there is progress, though there could be some questions. Now, the country is waiting to see how far the Parliament shall go in tackling the corruption, which has come out as a key point in Changwanzi. Supporting the president is undoubtable and undebatable, because the whole country has really, especially at the legislative level, it has not been common that you see Parliament rejecting the proposals of the president or from the executive. There has been quite cohesion in supporting the government positions in Parliament. So that for the presidential support, that one is not debatable. The issue is now how Parliament shall tackle this corruption, hands-on. Ugandans are really waiting to see how much consistency in terms of the political will shall be given. Because the problem is when you have got the laws, you have got the institutions, but at some point, the interference or the backstepping from the political side takes the center stage. Kasim Kamujisha is found in a very open corruption scandal, but because of the political connections, because of the political maneuvers, he walks out free. So the country is waiting to see how far the Parliament shall go in that line. Number two, this corruption is really fightable, but the problem has been operation in what I can call silos. You have got the IGG, whose core mandate is to fight corruption. You have got the State House Anti-Corruption Unit, headed by General Isoke, and some other entities, which are establishments of the law. But each one of these is taking a direction that is not similar or that is not coordinated to harmonize their efforts in the fight against corruption.
Okay.
So for me, I would now want to see Parliament coming out to guide the country on how to coordinate the efforts of all these entities, so that if one is involved, because these are syndicates, it's not a one-off, these are syndicates that are embedded within the systems. So how do we ensure that we coordinate the efforts of all these players in fight against corruption and championed by the Parliament?
All right.
And lastly, there is a voice which is coming out, and really some of us are impressed. When you see a four-star general and a CDF also putting his voice on the fight against corruption, I think it's giving direction. What we need to do is to ensure that everybody comes out to support these efforts. And so Parliament is at the center stage, and everybody is looking to see how they will champion this resolution of fighting corruption so that Uganda can be in the high middle income status by 2040.
On that note, still of corruption, Sarah, I would like you to make a comment, especially on views of Ugandans about how they believe that some of the money that the party chairperson has given out to the party members is in itself corruption.
Yes, Priscilla, if I get to that, you know, when you go under the 10 points program, immediately after taking power in '86 by President Museveni, point number 7 was on elimination of all forms of corruption and abuse of office. So you have had 40 years of fighting corruption right from the 10 points program. Do we have any successes to register under President Museveni? Apart from establishment of acts and institutions that are later undermined by the same authority. So I think for me, and in every retreat, from '86 up to today, NRM has always come up with a promise to fight corruption. Even every manifesto of NRM has a fight against corruption. Where have we reached so far? What are the successes? What are the challenges beyond artificial institutions that you have in place? 2, corruption is fought through demonstrable practice. What does the leadership of NRM demonstrate in their party primaries, as they run government and head public service, and the act of the leader? And you can compare with our neighbors, President Kagame, the late Magufuli, on that. What does the leadership of NRM demonstrate? In the same retreat, the president had to explain how he had forgiven corruption. He referred to this MP for Masaka, saying we had to go to these MPs. And he had himself on the State of Nation address said he had evidence of budget corruption and is going to act. Ugandans were very excited. He acted, 3 MPs were arrested. In the same retreat, he's explaining how he forgave them. The power which he doesn't have. The president has a prerogative of mercy in the Constitution. He can forgive all crimes. But after the court process has been exhausted, there are procedures of exercising prerogative of mercy. So in abuse of his office, he's telling his cadres and leaders that I have forgiven corruption outside the constitutional provisions of prerogative of mercy. Is that a leader that can fight corruption? When they go for their party primaries, their own leaders were complaining about unexplainable sacks of money for voter bribery in Kororo. SEC members, 3 of them, 2 dropped out because of corruption in their party primaries. Is that a party that can fight corruption? When you go to the money, now the question that you ask me, the 100 million, I'm told by yesterday evening, some of the MPs have not seen the money. And even the deposit of 20 million, I hope they've seen it. So some of them were saying they are being used and it was, hey, I hope it has come. So what is the source of these funds? Is it party funds? Have the party requisitioned and paid? Was a decision taken to pay? Or it's a bribe by the president or a reward?
All right.
But as I conclude, during the enactment of the UPDF Act, the president on his blue-headed paper wrote how he had sent 100 million bribe to MPs to enact the UPDF Act. So is that a demonstrable character of a
Timothy,
leader that can fight corruption?
institutionalizing the culture of discipline, ethical conduct, as well as accountability and result-oriented leadership is one of the resolutions at the, from the retreat.
Yeah.
How do we see it actually affecting how the next cohort of leadership does implement things that at the end of the day must concern and affect the ordinary Ugandan?
Thank you, Priscilla. So the one area that we've not done very well is allowing institutions to operate within their mandate. And that even those who head these institutions seems to have a belief that there has to be a smoke coming from somewhere, and that every decision they ought to make or they make, they have to assess and gauge it, which has fundamentally affected the ability of these institutions to exercise their mandate. Of course, probably relating to the just concluded discussion around the, say, IGG, who is responsible for matters, corruption among many other roles. They've come out clearly decrying of interference, decrying their incapacity or interference around their ability to administer the question of corruption. And that speaks again to the remarks that Sarah refers, where the president says, a few of my members came and we discussed these matters out of the court, notwithstanding the irregularity that comes along with it. It means that I think that there is no willingness to ensure that institutions for which we've given mandate to exercise that role. And that also goes into even the arms of government. That would extend to Parliament. That Parliament seems to be, and has presented itself as an extension to the executive. That equally, whatever decisions that have to be made in Parliament have to be double-checked with those in the executive. And probably also, if you see how the leadership of these institutions have conducted themselves, and sometimes, many times presenting themselves as vulnerable, and probably, their inability to administer what they are supposed to do, it tells you that there's a fundamental breakdown of the ability of this institution to exercise their mandate. And so I think that is simply a recycle of resolutions, okay. And we are not likely to get there.
All right, debates around sovereignty, around governance and accountability are intensifying in different corridors, and different meetings and different circles, different social media platforms. But one thing is clear, that what is decided in a particular realm of power must ultimately transform into what we see as trust among the citizenry. This is going to bring us to the end of this discussion. It's a continuous debate, and so we'll